Ka-chow! What's poppin' pumpkin heads? It's your boy Sweet Lou here for the first time with pumpkin stencils. A big part of carving an excellent pumpkin is making one for the subject matter that you want to make. I grew a pumpkin named Ellen Ripley, so I'm going to show you how to make a Ellen Ripley pumpkin stencil. The overall idea is that you take a kick-ass image, something with lots of shadow and dynamic contrast that gets your subject across, and then you reduce it down to three colors: the white, which you carve all the way through, the black, which you leave alone, and the gray, which you shade. You can get tricky with the shading, make some of it higher or lower, but basically it's just three colors. I'm doing this all on a image editor that's free called GIMP, G-I-M-P, Golf India Mike Papa. Download it, it's free, use it, it's great. First thing you want to do is pick a picture with good dynamic contrast, lots of shadow. You want your figure to be about in half shadow. That's what really makes it pop. I could have done this photo, but I thought that this was just a little spookier and a little cooler. Once you have it, I'm going to show you all the different steps I took. This is what you're aiming for at the very end. This is what you will print out and poke onto and tape to your pumpkin and poke through, and the gray you peel and the black you cut through. It's pretty basic, but it's kind of hard to get there. This is what it looks like as sort of a preview of the pumpkin. It's got little specks and spots, but you'll ignore those as you actually go and poke around. Okay, let me show you what I did to get here. Basically, first thing you do is take your image, find you zoom in, frame it about the portrait size that you want, and then you pop that in. Let's go all the way down here. Boop. So you fire up your image, you open it in GIMP, and then you use the selection tool to narrow it to where you want. You make this box, and then copy it and you paste it as its own image. That's how I got this. So I pasted, let's show you one by one. Paste the whole thing in here, and then I black and whited it right away to grayscale. That may have been good or bad, I don't know, I just wanted to see what it would do. And then I started making some of the darks dark and cut it all the way down to just my final frame. It took me a while, blacked everything else out, then I cut that last bit out and made that my workspace and posted it into this image. Let's go all the way down and turn this off. What I'm doing here is as I was going through, I saved a bunch of layers. Basically, I would do something, I duplicate the layer. I do something, I duplicate the layer, so I could have this to show you. Normally, I wouldn't make this many layers. But basically, okay, so you get it down to your broad strokes of what you want, and then you make the core of this is about making decisions about what should be ignored, what should be cut, what should be sliced. And the broad philosophy I bring to it is whenever there's detail that's almost there, you want to make sure you don't lose that as you go further down the process. You want to keep the important details. So for this picture, the most troublesome part is the eye. So it lets you know who it is we're looking at. And there's a lot of details that are not like, there's not a lot of jet black in this area and not a lot of bright white. So you have to go through and make decisions in like the small decision after small decision is totally build it up until you take this sort of dark gray area and make sure that that comes out as black, and you take the white parts and make sure that that's completely clean, and basically narrow off 1,000 shades of gray into just 3. All right, so the big ways to do that is looks like I already did, I blocked out this into just black. The parts that seem like they're just easy black, just make those black right away. So that's what I did here. Make all those easy decisions, and then, oh, that wasn't a big change. Oh, and then here, I was like, okay, some of this is black. This isn't detail I really want, so I used just the paintbrush over here with a big size. Oh, the other thing is I forgot to tell you, you want to resize this to about 800 by 600 pixels. You can do this by going to Image and then Scale Image, and then go by pixel, and then you keep it locked. You change it to the height to be about 800. If it's portrait size, paper, the width will be about 600. It doesn't have to be precise, but that's just an easy working size. Too big when you're applying layers and stuff, your computer might chug and chug. If you keep it about this size, a pixel is something that's meaningful for when you're actually slicing. Maybe if I was doing an enormous pumpkin, I would get a higher res, but 800 by 600 is about fine. Otherwise, you're fiddling with details that won't show up on the paper, much less on the pumpkin. All right, so 800 by 600, making the things that are about black, with a big, what is this size, 59 brush. So going through there, making big choices. Then the next one, you have the size of the brush, so about 30. And then you start making, some other choices. It feels like you're losing some detail, but that's okay. You got to think about what's going to end up on the pumpkin at the very end. Okay, and then I did my first tricky thing. So this is where you can leverage the tool itself with GIMP. Up until now, you could have just printed out and marked it up with a marker on paper. Once you have the tool of GIMP, you start taking the darkest colors and growing them slowly from being a dark gray to black. And then you start with the brightest whites and you grow them slowly to being completely white instead of just white. The way you do that in this tool is you find a spot, well, like this is mostly gonna all be black. Maybe there's like a little ridge in the middle. But you go in and you find the darkest pixel that's here, and then you go to, it is Shift O, or you can hunt for it by, it's called color selector. So is it color select? I've been using it too much to not remember. Oh, select color, Shift O. What you're going to do is you're going to find the darkest pixel you can find. So you zoom all the way and you'll be like, oh, this is a pretty dark pixel. And then you click it. And it will collect that and some other pixels based on these choices over here. So over here, you can make this threshold higher or lower. The higher the threshold, that means the more other similar colors it grabs when you click a pixel. The lower the threshold, the more precise it is with just that. So it looks like I had this on 7. Let's see what happens if I turn it way up to about 14 and then click on a pixel. It'll pick a lot more, right? If I go back to that one pixel I liked, it'll click it and a bunch of other stuff. Maybe that's what you want. I want to be a little bit more precise. So it does this in drag or double click. Don't drag and click. It gives a little, it lets you customize things, but sometimes you can't. So drop it all the way down to threshold, anti-aliasing. Don't think I want that. And then select transparent areas. I guess that's fine. Okay, so quick Control A makes it so that you don't select anything. That's really useful because the actual selection is sort of noisy when you're doing this sort of work. So dial it down to threshold 7, no anti-aliasing, zoom in on something dark, you click it, and then it'll sort of grab with the threshold 7 a lot of other things. It's just too much. Maybe that's all supposed to be black. Okay, so now once you have it, you can turn it all black at once. If it's dark enough, you're not losing a lot. You can just say, okay, this is all black. I'll show you how to do that. So with all these selected, note this little icon up here is your foreground and background. If you just go to paint, it'll paint with this color. And then this is like a quick switch. If you tap X, switches between these, so you can just toggle between 2 colors really easily. So let's say we want to make all of this black. We'll keep it selected, and then we'll hit Shift B, which is the old school MS Paint bucket tool. And then in order to make this work for us, we just want to make everything that we have currently selected black. So make sure that our image up here, or that our selection color is black. And then we want to do fill whole selection. And then we just click anywhere. Look. Is it working? Oh, that's why I'm selecting the wrong. Oh, this is tricky. So I have the wrong layer selected. This is the layer I'm actually working on. So when I select that color, it grabs all similar ones. Okay. Now I click, boop, and it turns it all black. Now, like, oh, what does that actually do? Hit Control A, and it deselects everything. Like, oh, okay, I took things that were really close to black, and I made them black. All right, that's progress. That's what I did for up here. Then, basically, layer after layer upon this is going colors that you think will probably be black, selecting them with the selection tool, which is Control O. Sorry, not Control O. Shift O. Selecting the color you want. Shift O. Select by color. Shift O. Yeah. Shift O. Oh, it's because I'm on the wrong. Did it again. Okay. That's what I did. I actually turned this whole black. Yeah, you got to be careful with what layer you're using. Sorry, that's my first time doing it. All right, so you find the color you think you kind of want to be black. You Shift O to select that color. If the threshold's an alias, it'll select similar colors. And then you can do what we did earlier, which is you go to the bucket, you turn it all black, Shift B. Shift B for the bucket, and you select the whole selection, you can turn all black. That's one way to do it. But as you get finer and finer, sometimes you want to make a choice. Basically, the philosophy is if it seems like it's the color you want, surrounded by a lot of not those colors, then you want to make it dark. But if it's that color and there's a ton of it, and it's like you want to grow little islands of the color you're thinking, and you want to shrink it for when it's overwhelming. So, an example of this, you're like, oh, okay, perfect. This hairline. If I turned it all black, this hairline would be black and it would grow out. That's great, right? It's sort of like a peninsula that we want to keep there. But there's places where you don't want to lose too much detail, like in here. This is a bit of her hair for the photo, right? Like that's this part of her hair. But if you get too zealous with turning dark grays into black, you might lose this detail here by doing it like whole cloth. So in order to give you the room to actually make good choices about what you want to go from dark gray to black, you can actually change and use the paint tool. I don't know what the hotkey for the paint tool is, but you want to go paint tool, you want to go the brush, the big black circle, you want the hardness to be 100. You don't want aliasing or anything. You want to narrow everything down to 3 colors. If you use like a feathering effect on the paintbrush, it can end up biting you in the butt later on. You want a hard 100% color. It's going to be either all the colors you have selected, you turn them all for black, white, or gray. So you're taking a bunch of noise and you're simplifying it down to 3 colors. So for this eye, think of that philosophy. It's like an island we want to grow to make sure we don't lose detail. So I will, with this black color selected and my full hardness brush of a size that's not too big, not too small, now I can paint over and be like, yes, I want all of this, to be black. Ooh, it looks like I'm not picking all of the blackest colors in this area. It's sort of tricky. Sometimes you get this weird, like a valley in between the edge. So what you can do is keep hopping back to Shift O, select these dark colors that you feel like they should be black. You can also, while you have some colors collected with your threshold, hold down Shift and you can add more colors, and you can even add all of the black. So you can sort of see in one look, in one selection, all the colors that are about to be black. Zoom back out, hit the paintbrush. I always go main with the paintbrush and paint over that. You're like, oh, okay, I'm getting all these colors are going to go from dark gray to black. And you can see what it looks like by hitting Control A, which deselects everything. Sort of see what you got. And when you zoom out, you're like, oh, okay, that part for eyeball is very deeply shaded. And you can be like, oh, I think all these dark black dark grays in here should end up being uh, black as well. So you can select those with Shift O, and then switch over to your paintbrush and be like, oh, I want all those. Or if you're like, it's so black, I want the whole bucket, go Shift B, and then B for bucket, fill whole selection, just click anywhere it's covered, and it'll make it all black. Good, and when you uncontrol, you see you've made things a little bit darker. Okay, now let's see what I actually did. Or instead of me fooling around and showing you the mechanics of how to do it, we'll go through step by step and see what I actually did. So it looks like I grew the black around her nose and around her eye. Good, and then, ooh, I made sure to keep this down here in the curly bit. Oh, yeah, and then I just did like, okay, I was like, okay, all of the blacks instead of this noisy, weird gray, I was like, let's just commit. It's not going to be, we're not going to, there's no detail in these sort of fuzzy black areas. Let's just make it all black. Okay. Then what was the next part? Okay, so this was probably the trickiest one I did in um, the whole pattern. This is where you're making hard choices about where black should be. So I basically did the same thing I showed you before, where I took dark grays, selected them using the color selector, and then painted them. I think I just did this around areas where I thought I was going to lose detail, trying to grow little bits of black, rather than the opposite, which is where there's a ton of black, and then you grow it and you lose detail. I think I was okay with losing a little bit of detail here. I didn't really like what it was. So on the photo, if you look on the video, this is like a little bit of hair hanging down behind her eye. I mean, it's filmed, so they couldn't control that, especially at the time. I think that I ended up taking that away at the very end. It distracts a little bit from otherwise clean thing. So I was okay with sort of letting the darkness sort of like push that into nothing. But in the eye, I got some really good detail there. I was like, oh, we're making choices. And then I backed up. I was like, do I like this? Do I like how it's darker? And I feel like, okay, it actually serves to give more detail. If I squinted and I lost that black and it was all gray, I would not get the detail of her eye. I was like, okay, that was a good choice. And then, okay, so now I did the other part. So I started by taking the darkest grays and making them black. The next part is I took the lightest grays and made them white, following the same exact idea. So if there was a little island of white, I wanted to grow that to get more clarity. So I would select, I'll do it one more time just for funsies. I would select with Shift O, the select by color. I would pick the very light, pick the very lightest gray and Shift to select a little bit bigger. I take all these, and then with my paintbrush, instead of black, I'll change it. They keep black and white here just for quick reference. Change it to white. I could paint all those grays. Oh, sorry. I won't save this. Layer here. Very easy to do. And you paint all those, and now the light gray disappears. You're sort of growing that pocket, or where it might be smush, you might be losing detail, you grow it out. I should have done that too here, because I actually like this on her eyebrow. If you look here on the eyebrow, the white sort of bleeds right up against the hair of her eyebrow. I think I didn't grow that as much. Then went back and fixed it later on. So right, so you go that. So I might have just done that with the bucket, which did all of it. But I think I started to get a little fancier and just do it with the paintbrush. So you select everything, and that's sort of like a candidate for you want to change it to white, and then you go around doing that. In here, where it's these little islands, that's an easy choice to change little islands of near white, change them to white. All right, then you Control A to go back and see how things have changed. So going back, so we took the black and made it black, and then we took the whites and grew the lightest grays into white. So her forehead got a little bit shinier. We lost a little curl of hair. That might have been a mistake. That ends up that back in. Oh yeah, we lost this curl of hair up here. Put that back in again. All right, let's see. Okay, so we drew the white out a little bit. I think I this part of her nose. Next. Oh, okay, and then I went back. So we grew the white a little bit whiter. It's like, oh, this left eye is dark, but I want to not lose it. Then down by the lip. That, okay. Then, oh, now it's really coming together. I grew the blacks a little bit more to get that next step. So that was gone by going in, selecting the next layer of dark blacks, and then using the paintbrush. All right, and then, oh, this was a big one. Yeah, not the hardest one. This was a big one. I was like, oh, it turns out this whole iris is going to be black. And then we get this whole down here. It's like, oh, it really starts to look like her. And then we grew the white. I lost a bit. I think that's okay. I lost her other eyebrow. That show up in the end? Wow, I'm going to have to grow her eyebrow and this loop of hair now that I've noticed it. Ooh, I'm getting value out of going back to this. All right, so back here, no hiding. Yeah, you can turn on with the seeds. Okay. And then this one, through the white out of it. Yeah, that's what we were just talking about. Oh, it looks like I undid it. Maybe. What is this? Oh, okay. Now I've started. I really undid it. Let's bring it black through the black, through the white. And now, oh, okay, so this is the next phase. So we've taken the darkest grays, made them black. We've taken the, based on the detail. You want to gain detail, not lose it. So if there's just a little tiny bit of detail you're afraid of losing, grow it. And with the whites, the same thing. A tiny little detail, a highlight of her hair here. We want to grow that, make sure we don't lose it. And then you take the grays and you're like, okay, guys, we want the, this is the hardest one sometimes because like we want the middlemost colors to be middlemost. And then you can make decisions like, does it matter to make a distinction between gray and black here? If not, make it black. Does it matter if it makes a distinction between gray and white here? If not, make it white. And then, yeah, so I smoothed it all out. So we took light grays that were all spotty. They'd been sort of battling between the blacks were growing black, the whites were growing white, and then the gray were just sort of like all these different remaining colors. I was like, okay, you're your own tribe now. Boom. And you're this medium-sized gray. I think I went and grabbed a medium-sized gray from the color picker. If you click on one of these, and you click on this this part that's just the white gray, you go dead in the middle and you get like a nice medium gray. Make that your color. And you can say like all those weird like middle grays can be like, oh, full 50% gray. Yeah, so I took all those. I think I did that with just bulk with the bucket. Good. And then I smoothed it by hand. This is where you use your skills of an artist a little bit. What I did was there's parts where it's like white and gray are fighting and it ends up with this like this weird like patchy, and that's like, you're not going to carve that. You're going to carve smooth carves. You're not going to make 1,000 little dots. So what I did was take just the paintbrush tool and I used white and made it like a white line and then a gray line to smooth that out a little bit in parts where it was getting this weird splotchy color. Yeah, the eye might have lost a little something. She looks a little duller. All right. Here. Oh, then I took this medium gray and then posterized. We haven't talked about posterization yet. All we did was grayscale it and then start fighting from darker grays up to black, the brightest grays to white, and the middle grays to a middle. But GIMP has a very valuable filter, a color tool called posterize. Where you hit colors, you go to posterize, and you get to pick the levels. Oh, you can't really see what the differences are. Let's play with this here. We'll do it on this one. We took this and we hit posterize for colors posterize. Basically, it takes the 5 million colors, whatever, and then limits it down to a certain number. If you were really lazy about this, you could just pick the right posterize level that sort of gives you the detail you want, and then be like, oh, that's good enough. I can turn that into a pattern. I've only got 5 minutes. You can just take that and print it and sort of, you can get pretty far with that, right? Like that's not too far different from what I ended up with. But I got really fussy with it and zoomed in because I wanted the eye to pop in a certain way. I wanted a little bit more control. But the GIMP tool itself kind of does that for you. You just gain and do stuff a little bit more different than I would want all the time. You're like, so this is pretty good. Anyways, once you've already fought it down uh, to 3 colors or thereabouts, then you use posterize, and it's very sure, like, hey, just 3 colors. If there's little bits you want to just sort of correct it to a bucket. All right, what did I do next? Oh, and then I was like, okay, I remember this. I took a look at, I made a, move this back down here. Yes, so I made a mock-up. So I took those 3 colors, now that I only have 3 colors, and then I changed those colors to an orange to represent where it's peeled, and a yellow where it's cut through, and I'm like, oh, this is my first idea of what the pumpkin will look like in the end. And it wasn't until just now that I realized, oh, if you cut through all those yellow areas, then it's going to be just sort of hanging. It's going to be a flap of pumpkin flesh hanging in this, in this helmet. And you don't get a lot for that. The helmet's bright white. Who cares? It doesn't add much to the picture to add this structural defect that will make it much harder to last. And if it starts to rot, it will curl in right here. It will curl in, and it just won't look very good. And I realized that it was like we don't gain a lot with the helmet for how it's good to have it. I like it there because it makes it pop, right? Doesn't this bright white sort of like maker face pop? But I think that a deep gouge scrape will give the same effect. So I went back and lost a lot of the helmet instead of making it white. Instead of making it white, where you would cut all the way through, I just made it gray. And then having this extra stuff on top, I lost it and just narrow it down to just evoke that like clean sort of line. And I was like, okay, what does that look like as a preview? I'm like, okay, there we go. And then I played with that, and I was like, okay, let's go cleaner. I've had this hair over here, and now it's drawing away the eye. Sure, it's detail, but maybe we could just focus on her and her eyes. I might even lose some of the hair detail. Oh, looks like I just played with the colors a little bit more to be like, oh, this is sort of a dumpy, ugly orange. Let's make it a more vibrant orange. And then I change it into the stencil itself. So that's a multi-step thing. So I'll walk you through it. You can print out a jet black piece of paper with orange and yellow on it. That's wasteful to printer. What you actually want to print out is what you buy in those books at the grocery store, which is just mostly a white piece of paper with some gray and some black, which is this. But it's kind of hard to get from this to that. What did I do for this? I think I got a little fancy. I did color replacement. You might be able to just invert the colors, swap colors, exchange. What can we do? What is it? Posterize. This just 2 seconds. Value invert, is that it? Oh, but we lose the gray. Okay, so here's what I did. I have these 3 colors. I want them, these 3 colors. So what I did what I've been doing this whole time. I did Shift O, selected all the black, and then did Shift E for my bucket tool and made all the black white. Then I did Shift O, selected all of the yellow, did Shift E and made all the yellow black. Then I did Shift O one more time, hit all the orange, Shift B, and then pick that nice. If you click on a color, you can go from some recent colors you've had. That nice like 50% black, 50% gray, and then boom, there we have it. And then Control A, so you don't see anything. And now that's it. That's your pattern. That's what you would print out and put on the pumpkin and cut it up. So for people following this channel, I'm going to use this or maybe a slightly edited version of this and make it for my Ellen Ripley pumpkin, for the Ellen Ripley pumpkin that I grew in the backyard. But with those changes we talked about, I don't want to lose that little loop of hair up here, and I don't want to lose her eyebrow. And that's it. So other concerns I have for this is that the actual detailed part of this is sort of small. So if a normal piece of paper is 8.5 by 11, it's really only half of that that's got the real detail. So I might, if I can, blow it up a little bit, but then there's some problems with that. If I can make it a little bit bigger than 8.5 by 11, I would do that. The pumpkin I'm working on, for those who are familiar, is pretty tall. So if I could blow it up a little bit, maybe go to a Kinko's or something, I don't know how to do that. And I might do that. Or if it's 8.5 by 11, I could do this. I could say, okay, I kind of know what's going on with the helmet. There's not a lot of detail there I care about. So I'm going to take this pattern I worked so hard with. I will make it, the ratio of 8.5 by 11, just normal portrait, and then just trim it down to the parts that are most important, and then Control C to copy that, Control Shift V to paste it as its own image, and then just print this. And then I can sort of use my imagination or a reference photo to extend the helmet part when I actually go to copy it, and I can have the full 8.5 by 11 piece to be the detailed stuff on her face. I don't want to lose anything. You can lose detail on the helmet. That's just a framing device. So anyways, I think that's actually what I might do. So this is good. Doing this video, I might actually change this. So then once you have the image in GIMP, there's not Control P prints. It's a little fussy because it's a shared license thing. So what you do is, in order to get a GIMP image file, if you hit Control S and save this, it would save it as an XCF file, like a GIMP file. But if you want it like a normal image, you actually have to export it. So it's Control Shift E to export, and then you say like, oh, okay, so Ellen Ripley zoomed in. You'll save that, and then you can just manually change the file type there. If I change it from JPEG, I can change it to PNG, and it will save it as PNG. GIMP's pretty smart that way, and it'll give you little options like, oh, I'm going to export it as this. Go ahead, and I can do it again. I can Control Shift E to export it, and then change it again from PNG to JPEG. That, and we'll ask different settings like, oh, exporting as a JPEG, quality 100, export it. Now when you go looking for it, you can actually find JPEG. You can send that to your local printers, to the Washougal library, and get it printed there, or anywhere else you actually want to print it. Okay, thank you. This is the very first on how to create a pumpkin stencil. I'll do another one for this, at the very least for Buffy Summers, and maybe a couple other ones. Let me know if there's parts you want more detail on. Otherwise, thank you for putting up with this long. I'll catch you later.